to give some theoretical context and introduction to this very special place. But I also hope that it'll be very relevant to the burial grounds and places you all value deeply. The construction of a collective identity rooted in popular ephemeral traditions renders Greenwood and cultural landscapes like a quintessential sites of memory. Unlike sites of history, which record and project an official sort of inflexible account of the past, sites of memories are in the business of evoking. So their power really lies in their physicality and their malleability, which grants them the power to move between collective and highly personal narratives. This power is what brings us all here today as we consider how to elevate the stories told by Greenwood and the other important sites of African American memory that we are all here to discuss and consider. So just some quick background about Greenwood Cemetery. It was established in 1874 as the first non-denominational commercial cemetery for African Americans in the St. Louis area. It's 32 acres. They house 6,000 marked graves and up to 50,000 burials, including Harriet Robinson Scott, who was Dred Scott's widow, musicians Walter Davis, civil rights leader Charleston Tandy, and many others. It's worth noting that Greenwood was founded as part of the rural cemetery movement, which started with Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, Massachusetts. These landscapes celebrated picturesque nature as a stage set for commemoration, and they were based on the principle of one person, one grave. So when Greenwood Cemetery opened in 1874, formerly enslaved African Americans who, like Dred Scott, would have previously been buried either in unmarked graves or family plots, were now granted the right to be marked and to be buried in individual burial plots. So this site, Greenwood Cemetery, is really about the right to be remembered. And just another bit of interesting background. So the rural cemetery dates back, the principle of one person, one grave dates back to post-revolutionary France. And that was really institutionalized in Père Lachaise Cemetery, which you see here on the left. And on the right is kind of an early mapping of Greenwood Cemetery. And you can see that there's an interesting kind of reference. I don't know if it's on accident, but to me, it's like the Greenwood was really kind of referencing the more gridded layout of Père Lachaise, this idea of a flattened hierarchy, and the notion of the American cemetery, rural cemetery, as a democratic public space. But there's a fundamental tension to Greenwood's origin story because it was the product of racist policy. It was a segregated space from the very beginning. The increased demand for cemetery space opened up, post-Civil War, opened up a new real estate market, and Herman Kruger, who was a white man, entered this lucrative captive market, and he was the person who started Greenwood as a commercial enterprise. So Greenwood was a really vibrant community space through the Jim Crow era. It became a place where migrants could preserve Black burial traditions passed down from previous generations. There are customs documented there, such as vernacular concrete grave markers and grave goods that really go back to customs that came, from West Africa in many cases and were kind of brought over. But at the same time, upon de jure desegregation, the cemetery saw a sharp decline in use because at that point, it was no longer a captive market, right? And then divestment and rising poverty engulfed both Greenwood and the surrounding community. And for decades, Greenwood stood derelict and overgrown in one of the most segregated, poorest communities in the metropolitan area. So, the parallels between the breakdown of Greenwood's grave markers, like you see here, and the civic fabric around it are unmistakable. And indeed, Hillsdale is 96% African American, which is a demographic typical of St. Louis's northern suburbs. Its estimated median household income is $21,000, which is less than half of Missouri's median income. And Ferguson, the birthplace of Black Lives Matter, is only 5 miles away. So again, this place really kind of is a reflection of the rise and fall of the civic community around it. So thanks to the efforts of the nonprofit Greenwood Cemetery Preservation Association, led by Etta Daniels, Raphael Morris, and Shelley Morris. And I just absolutely love I love these people, and I'm really honored to speak with them today. Greenwood is now listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and the group has been advocating for its clearing and restoration. Here is Raphael and Etta doing some prospecting on site. So, Greenwood Cemetery prompts really deep questions about race, remembrance, and the narrative and political agency of landscape. Here you can see the progression from 1937 to 2008, before this kind of clearing has begun, the more recent clearing. So here you have 32 acres of an important place of Black memory that were essentially erased from the map. So by means of its ecological dynamism, the landscape is kind of deleting itself. And the site, as much in its decline as in its peak, when it was this kind of civic space, is a living record of more than a century of demographic shifts, as you can see. When the area was kind of vibrant and, and kind of a healthy community, the cemetery was a healthy civic space. And then as the area kind of declined, the cemetery began deleting itself. So when considering sites which have fallen into disrepair, the narrative of wilderness often frames these ruins as the apex of a natural progression of events. And geographer Dennis Cosgrove calls this the duplicity of landscape. So when we see biomass, when we see lots of green, we too often forget design. So I would argue that the state of Greenwood was actually a product of carefully managed systems, in this case, racial segregation and discrimination, as well as local and national political decisions. And it was just as much a design decision as are like Olmsted's parks. And so taken as a given that landscape is telescopic, a site like Greenwood really pushes a critical stance on restoration. So to what extent can landscape as both a medium and a tradition help tell that full story of the place and embody its many legacies? If the future of Greenwood entails not going back to an idealized moment in time, but a more dynamic place of community, what might it look like? So when I met Etta, Raphael, and the rest of the association, I saw my role as primarily an advocate and ally. And this is their site and their story, after all, as much as I really fell in love with it because it's just so beautiful and powerful. So I proposed a series of strategies, basically engage, reveal, and imagine, to envision Greenwood's future as a vibrant, layered public space, one that blurs the distinction between park, museum, and community center. Such a landscape would pay homage to the cemetery's rich history as a community, as a burial ground, but also take advantage of its biodiversity as a community resource, and at the same time also engage directly with the site's history. So the vision is to really expand the definition of what a monument is, and to recognize that a landscape can be a living monument and a living record. So here's just an example of, in my kind of very abstract envisioning of what this place could be. So you go from a place that is impenetrable, although very rich, to very careful kind of interventions that make it into a community space again. Because again, the rural cemetery was about community. People have stories of going there to be with family, to have lunch, to walk around. It wasn't a place for the dead, it was a place for the living and the dead. So, this kind of reclaiming of this site would also help leverage the profile of this valuable landscape in St. Louis and connect it to other cultural nodes. So that's kind of the vision. But really, Shelley and Raphael have been doing the incredible work on the ground, stewarding the land, building partnerships, and raising Greenwood's profile, both locally and regionally. So that their work is ongoing and they're here to talk about it. But institutional funding for this sort of site is surprisingly, or actually very unsurprisingly, difficult to come by. And this is really something that's true of so many Black burial grounds and Black historical sites across the South and across the country. So I think we really have to think about, yes, there is the energy, the community's energy, and the energy of dedicated people like Shelley and Raphael is one powerful engine, but we also need to recognize the value of these sites from an institutional societal perspective so that they can really be supported and recognized. So I'm really grateful for events like these that elevate the stories of these sites and these places and people who care for them, as we grapple with the future of collective memory and memorialization at this very painful kind of pivotal time in our history. So, having posed some of the big questions, I am honored to introduce Shelley and Raphael Morris, who are, as I said, really working daily on this site. So I'm going to do a brief bio. So Shelley Morris is board secretary of the Greenwood Cemetery Association. She retired from Emeren, Missouri after 38 years of service as an energy services consultant. Since retiring, she's been dedicated to restoring the grounds of Greenwood and also has kind of taken on the mantle of historian. Etta Daniels is really the foundational historian of the site, but Shelley's kind of learned a lot from Etta and kind of bringing that work forward. So her interest is really in sharing the stories of those interred in the site and the importance of keeping that history alive. She's also an active community member, an active member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, and the 2019 recipient of Mission St. Louis Neighbors of the Year Award. And Raphael Morris is board chairman of the association. He worked for over 36 years in the agrochemical, agricultural, and pharmaceutical industries, starting at Monsanto and retiring in 2015 from ICL. He also was an alderman for the city of Pagedale. He was there for 4 terms, and he is now chair of the association. And he's really just out there on the site all the time, even when really he shouldn't be. We're always telling him, Raphael, like, you should just take a rest. And he's really kind of organizing and making sure that teams of volunteers have the wherewithal and the equipment to do their work. He is also the 2019 recipient of Mission St. Louis's Neighbor of the Year Award. So I'm going to pass the mic to Raphael and Shelley, but I'll continue sharing my screen to go through the rest of the images.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I want to thank Barbara Barksdale and the Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds Project for allowing Raphael and myself to share our experiences about restoring Greenwood Cemetery. Raphael and I plan to officially adopt Azura just as soon as she tells her parents. She's an amazing woman, and I'm sure you've all come to find this out yourselves. She believes in what we are trying to do for Greenwood, and for that, we really want to thank her for sharing the spotlight on us. Raphael and I, we've been restoring the cemetery now for the last 5 years. Along with my duties of helping him, I'm also the secretary and the assistant historian for the cemetery. One of the most important things we do is tell the stories of those interred. And it's really a beautiful thing that we do. Greenwood reflects the socioeconomic conditions for African Americans of St. Louis. After the Civil War, African Americans in large numbers left the South, many of them with only the clothes on their backs, not prepared for St. Louis's harsh weather. St. Louis was also unprepared for the sheer number of people that arrived on their doorsteps. With limited housing, limited job opportunities, many families were crowded into living conditions that were considered unsafe. It was not uncommon to read about people being killed in fires, entire families being wiped out due to the unsafe conditions. Usually Blacks were given jobs in the most menial capacities that were extremely hazardous. And so when you're reading the death certificates, you can see where this person was killed on their job. And a lot of times when that happened, there was nothing left for their widow or their families to continue on. So the struggle was always very, very difficult for African Americans in St. Louis. But even in death, there was a disadvantage for us. Post-Civil War, for approximately 30 years, Greenwood Cemetery was the only place that allowed African American burials. It cost as little as $5 to bury a loved one there. There was never an endowment or perpetual fund established. We didn't have that kind of money. Harriet Robinson Scott, the wife of Dred Scott, worked as a laundress, but when she died, there was no money to bury her. Her church members and the community came together to provide something for her because there was no recognition for her life. Her daughters, Lizzie and Eliza, are also buried there at the cemetery, while Dred is buried in Calvary Cemetery, which is, I guess, about 20 miles from Greenwood. We've been fortunate for the past years to partner with various organizations and historical groups. Each year, we commemorate Missouri's emancipation, which happens on January 11th, 1865. Our historian, Etta Daniels, and myself were asked to provide a story of those who were enslaved or freed during that time. There are over 6,000 people that were enslaved that are buried in Greenwood. Many of them would go on to play active roles in the history of St. Louis. This year we did something a little different. Along with that, we also, for Black History Month in February, we highlighted a story on our social media pages about someone that was buried in Greenwood. So each day we had a story to tell. And it was like first generation professionals such as doctors, attorneys, musicians, teachers, scientists, businessmen, suffragists. We have just a gamut of people that are buried in Greenwood. But the most compelling stories that we tell are the one of the common man, the everyday man that all of us can relate to. One such story that received a great deal of feedback and comments and likes was of Walter Johnson. He wasn't famous, he didn't do anything special, but he left a huge mark on his family. He was simply Dad. We receive calls daily of someone looking for information about a historical person or just a family member. And one of the most special things that happened for us was a young man who called, and he was looking for his mother. He had lost her at the age of 7, and he was now in his 40s, and he wanted to share his story with his daughter. And so he reached out to me, and I was able to provide a location for her. And he went out there, and now, mind you, where she is buried, that particular area had not seen maintenance for like decades. In some cases, some of our areas hadn't seen maintenance in over 30 years. And this was one of those areas. Fortunately, Raphael and a group of volunteers were out there the day that he had come out. And they stopped what they were doing. They wanted to see what they could find, because you just never know. It was difficult. Like I said, the area was severely overgrown, and they all decided to just kind of put it off for another day, to try to deal with it after they had had a chance to go through there. Well, one of the guys that had volunteered had tripped over something, and when he looked back, he had tripped over Margaret Rose Calhoun. This was this young man's mother. And so oftentimes we're able to tell stories like that almost every day. And with that, our lives have become enriched, being able to help people, being able to help those find closure. And I tell you, it has been a blessing for us. And I'd like to turn the story over to Raphael so he can tell you more about Greenwood.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for having us today also. And we have a very, very special fondness for Azura. I can recall the first time I heard of Azura, she sent me an email, and she had asked, would it be okay if she came to St. Louis and to Greenwood and do a little research or just get involved with the association. Now, I had no idea who she was. I'm up for wondering, who's this person from Harvard? I want to come to find out about this little cemetery we've been working on. And I remember telling her, not only is it okay if you come, but I'll pick you up at the airport, when you get here. Anyway, she has just truly been a treasure to us, and we just absolutely love her to death.
Me too. Same.
Greenwood has become a very, very, very special part of our lives. I didn't see this coming. 5 years ago, I was watching the news with my wife as she was getting ready for work. I had had surgery and I was off from my job, and there was a story in the news about this cemetery, and the people in the area were complaining about the conditions of it and this, that, and the other. And I said, well, I'm going to go out here and take a look and see what's going on. And it might be something I might want to get involved with. So that Saturday, they were forming a group to, see what could be done. So I decided to go out to the cemetery. I put up front, parked on the street, and you could not see a single stone on the property. From the street, as far as you could see, the growth was easily 15 to 20 feet tall. You could not take 2 steps into the cemetery because of the denseness and the thickness and the growth, that you were faced with. So I decided that at that point that it would probably be something that I probably really needed to get involved with. We started off with a group of maybe 15 to 20 people, and we had prayer that day, and everybody said, well, we're going to get involved and we're going to see if we can make a difference. There's probably 15 to 20 of us out there. We said every Saturday we're going to come out here and see what we could do to make a difference. Well, unfortunately, that changed to every other Saturday we'll get together, or if the weather's okay, we'll get together. Well, I've got this going on this weekend, so we're not going to be able to get together. So I told Shelley, I said, you know what? I said, this is no Saturday project. This needs a full-time commitment, to this restoration. So I decided at that point I was going to retire from my job, which I was already looking for an excuse to do. And I was going to devote my energies to trying to reclaim the cemetery. Little did I know just how large the cemetery actually was. It was probably twice the size that I was visualizing. I had no idea the scope of the commitment that I was making when I did that. I think back to years ago when I was a kid, maybe 9, 10 years of age. I was driving past the cemetery with my dad, and he mentioned, you got family in that cemetery. Being 9 years of age, that went over my head. But once I got involved with the cemetery, my mom had passed, my dad had already died, and cleaning out the family home, I ran across a Bible, and in the Bible was a stack of funeral burial cards. And in the car, looking through the cards, I found out I had great-grandparents, grandparents, all sorts of aunts and uncles buried in this cemetery that I had no idea about. So it went from something I probably should get involved with to something I've got to get done. So consequently, all of my energies and a lot of our money has gone into this project. We have the benefit of having groups from all over giving us a hand initially. But this year of COVID, we haven't had any of the groups that we would have come and give us a hand. That initial group of 15 to 20 that we started off with eroded to her and me.
Yeah.
So we were the crew. But fortunately, this year, or the last couple of years, we've had a dedicated group from the LDS Church that has really given us a hand a couple of days a week. So without their help, I don't know where we would be. But for the most part, as far as consistent labor, it's Shelley and myself. I had no idea that some of the pictures you're looking at now, it's hard to imagine that we would get to this point. Out of the 32 acres, we probably have cleared half of it.
At least
half of it. And, but the hard part, every time you clear a section, it's another section you've got to try to maintain. The first 2.5 years, believe it or not, I used to do this by hand. We didn't have a writing mower or anything. So a lot of this was done by hand. I don't know, I don't want to take up a whole bunch of time, but Shelley keeps pointing at her watch, telling me to move it along. But once I get talking, I can talk for days on this journey that we have taken. And believe me, it is a journey, but we're only halfway there. And this picture here is one of my favorite ones. It just kind of shows the progress that we have been able to make. Like I said, none of that you could have seen 5 years ago. I mean, absolutely nothing. It was just a forest. And the challenges are not only clearing, but once you clear it, how do you dispose of all the debris that you're clearing, challenges that you face. We've got infrastructure problems, that we're constantly dealing with. You name it, we've got it.
Yeah.
And about everything we do is out of pocket. And we haven't really been able to do a whole lot of good generating funds to consistently fund, this journey that we're on. But we're giving it our all, and we absolutely love what we're doing. Buddy man always tells me, you got this retirement thing all wrong, right? And I said, no, I think I got this one right. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you so much, Barbara.
There we go. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Zora. My goodness. I think the world is going to have to adopt you, well, everybody wants a piece of her now. I want her. Hey, come on over, Zora. Come on over to PA. All right. And Shelly and Morris, wonderful job. My God. I do understand, Raphael, exactly what you're saying out of your own pocket. And, when we're doing this as caretakers, we're doing it with purpose and passion. You have to have purpose and passion when it comes to this, because sometimes, because it's such a daunting task to do, it's you really don't look at how much money you're spending. You're looking at what you're getting, what you're accomplishing. And, like you mentioned, your ancestors, the grandparents and such like that, you're doing it for them, but you're doing it for everybody else's parent and grandparents and ancestors. It's all wrapped up in there, and you cannot do this without purpose and passion. Wonderful, wonderful thing that you're doing for Greenwood. I want to be able to take questions and answers, but we're going to go right on into our next speaker, and just to keep things flowing. However, once we get to and let me see where we're at here. Once we get to, we're going to, where are we at? Bertha, you're going to be unmuted there in a moment. And we're going to talk to Diane Miller, all right? And at the conclusion of Diane, if you guys don't mind, and I know you said you're going to stick around till the end, correct, Azura? Or near the end anyway. So we'll get some questions and answers going at that point. And if you do have any questions for the people that are online right now, please start writing them up, thinking about them, because there's a couple of things that I was thinking about as you were giving your presentations that we can put them into the chat room right now for Jeannie to take a look at and summarize, and then she can just present them to you when we get to that point, okay? So Bertha, if you don't mind unmuting yourself, or Brenda unmute her, and then she can do the intro for Diane Miller.
No, Bertha's going to talk about the legislation as well.
That's right. That's right. Legislative update. There you go, Bertha.
All right. All right, this is the legislative update in the state of Pennsylvania. A bill to establish an African-American burial grounds network as part of the National Park Service was introduced in 2019 by Congressman A. Donald McCutcheon, D. Virginia, and Congresswoman Alma Adams, D. North Carolina. The proposed legislation authorizes the network to create a nationwide database for historic African-American cemeteries and burying grounds, and provide technical assistance to document sites, create educational resources for local community members, and fund grants for detailed research on these significant cultural landscapes. The bill has now been introduced in the House as H.R. 1179, where it has 49 co-sponsors with bipartisan support, and in the Senate as S-2827 with 6 co-sponsors, including PA Senator Casey. The bill has not been passed by either House or Senate, and so will expire at the end of this congressional session in December of this year, 2020. It will need to be reintroduced in 2021 in both the House and the Senate. And since the concept of the network has been endorsed by a great number of national and local organizations, including the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and the need is great, there are hope that it can be acted on in the coming congressional term. That's the briefing, that's the update for African American Burial Grounds Network, which would be nationwide.
All right. Thank you, Bertha.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Now, Bertha will introduce our next speaker.
Okay. And the next speaker is Diane Miller. Ms. Diane Miller has served as the National Program Manager for the National Park Service National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom since 1999. Diane began her career at the NPS in my years and centuries confused here. Okay, Diane began her career at the NPS in 1984, working in the National Register of Historic Places programs. She received her MA in History from the University of Maryland and BAs in History and Anthropology from Ohio University. In December 2019, she received her PhD from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Her dissertation is Wyandot, Shawnee and African American Resistance to Slavery in Ohio and Kansas. Diane Miller.
Okay, I'm not seeing, is Diane unmuted? There she is, I see her.
Okay.
I hear you.
All right, thank you for that introduction. And it's been great to hear about Greenwood Cemetery. I'm going to share my screen now. And hopefully you're seeing that. So I was asked to tell you a little bit about the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. And so I'm going to give you the overview and glad to take questions later. The program was established in 1998 by legislation that directed the Park Service to have a program to commemorate the Underground Railroad, which was acknowledged as the first civil rights movement in the country.
Diane, you're not, we don't see your screen, I don't think.
Okay, oh wait.
You have to hit the.
Got it now.
There we go. There we go.
Okay, sorry about that.
Perfect, Diane.
Okay, so Bill Clinton signed the legislation. Former director Bob Stanton was director at the time, and he was there, and a number of community folks. So the legislation directs the National Park Service to do three things. It directs us to educate the public about the Underground Railroad, provide technical assistance, and create a network of sites, programs, and facilities that have a verifiable connection to the Underground Railroad, as well as to design a unique logo that would represent members of this network. So this Freedom Star here with the silhouette, looking toward the North Star, that is the Network to Freedom logo, and members of the network are able to use that on their sites and materials. So we developed this program through a lot of collaboration with community people, a number of charrettes and meetings in Columbus, Ohio, and Charleston, South Carolina. And we really aim this to be a community engagement program. Our goal is to help local communities tell their stories. So the way that we understand the Underground Railroad in the Network to Freedom is a little bit different than what you might have been taught in school. We don't think of it as a network of safe houses and Quakers helping people to hide as they make their way to Canada. We're focusing on the self-liberators, the people who were enslaved, who took that courageous step out of slavery. So we refer to it as the resistance to enslavement through escape and flight. And we include freedom seekers and those who assisted them in their efforts. And as we've been gathering material about this for 20 years, we've discovered a lot more stories than anyone ever really knew. And also that the story does go west out to California, even to Hawaii. So we're trying to illuminate that journey. What was that journey for self-liberators to get to freedom, and what was the life they created in freedom? And also to look at those who gave them assistance and what that looked like. Sorry, folks. Okay, so out of all of this, we do have some new ideas about the Underground Railroad. There was always sort of a debate as to whether it was organized or whether it was serendipitous, but in many ways it looks like a resistance movement. African-American agency was key. Black communities and churches were often on the front line of the Underground Railroad. We're looking at the fact that somebody escaped is what makes the Underground Railroad, not the fact that they got hidden someplace or helped along the way. And while traditionally the Underground Railroad was considered to be from 1830 to 1860, we recognize that these escapes happened as early as the first enslaved people were brought to the country. This nature of this escape and resistance evolved over time in places, and in some places it was very, very purposeful with networks of activists who were working together. So we know that it also went south to Spanish Florida, into Mexico, into the Caribbean, and westward. So the kinds of sites that we look for and recognize in the Network to Freedom can be associated with the Underground Railroad in a number of different ways. One is through association with a prominent person, such as Frederick Douglass or Harriet Tubman, Thomas Garrett, Josiah Henson. Sites associated with them can be recognized in the network. So we have, for example, Frederick Douglass's home in DC that he lived in long after he achieved freedom. We also recognize churches with active congregations. Many times this activity was sort of organized among church members and among families. A lot of you're gonna work with people that you trust when you're doing this kind of illegal activity. So we have a lot of churches in the network, Mother Bethel AME in Philadelphia. And quite relevant to this discussion, we do have a lot of burial sites and cemeteries in the network. Many times the only place, tangible place left to recognize someone's life is their burial site. And so if we have somebody, for example, William Still, who was just so incredibly important to the Underground Railroad, his burial site at Eden Cemetery is in the network. We have a cemetery out in Johnstown that was mostly destroyed in the flood, but some of it was saved, and then parts of it were, I think they salvaged what they could and kind of created a memorial. And so it's in the network as a cemetery and a commemorative site. Of course, we look at stations, places that people were helped or sheltered, because it is part of the story. It's just not the only part of the story. So Johnson House in Philadelphia, for example, we look at places associated with legal challenges to the Fugitive Slave Act. So the Old City Hall in DC, which had trials related to a famous escape incident in Washington, DC. We have military sites where freedom seekers might have fought out in Arkansas. There's Poison Springs battlefield where members of the 2nd Kansas Colored Volunteer actually engaged in battle. And we do have commemorative sites or monuments. This is one in Des Moines, Iowa. So we're interested to know what life people were able to create in freedom. So we look at destination sites. many people just had to leave the country. So there's a community in Red Base in Bahamas, Buxton, Canada, Nacimiento, Mexico. All of those are part of the story. But as well, some people did stay in northern states or out on the fringes of what was settled at the time. So there are destination sites that are in the country as well. So we also look at rebellion sites, escape sites, transportation routes, places where people were held in jail for breaking the fugitive slave law or for being a freedom seeker that was caught. We look at maroon communities. We look at kidnapping, which is kind of the reverse Underground Railroad, but is an important part of the context, an important part of the story. So unlike most Park Service programs and functions, we also include interpretive and educational programs. So we're very place-based as an agency, but we recognize with the Underground Railroad that so many places were lost that it is important to recognize and tell the story. So we have different types of interpretive programs, tours, performances, public programs, school programs, exhibits are recognized in the network. And because there was this thought that the Underground Railroad was illegal, so it was secret, and nobody kept records, and therefore you cannot find documentation about it, actually turns out not to be completely true. There are plenty of places where you can document and research the Underground Railroad. So we have facilities, research facilities in the network. The Pennsylvania State Archives is in the network. But we also have small community libraries, historical societies, and things of that nature that are places you can go to see the story. So we recognize these sites, programs, and facilities, and if you get listed in the network, you get to use the logo. It is a validation of the authenticity of the site. We have a passport program that you can participate in. You'll be added to the national database of Underground Railroad stories. You can get technical assistance from the network. But most importantly, perhaps, you can become eligible to apply for grants that the Network to Freedom gives sometimes. We are actually coming up with a round of grants that will be early next year, 2021. So we have over 600 listings around the country, scattered all around the country. Pennsylvania has 57, but you guys have a lot more you could have, and Maryland and Ohio are battling it out for first place. So most of what we have are sites, but we do have the programs and facilities. On our website, there's an interactive map that you can look at and drill down and see exactly what is listed and a description of them. The Network to Freedom is very happy to cooperate on interpretive and heritage tourism projects. It can be a catalyst for preservation. If you look at the before and after on some of these buildings, we were only a small piece of it, but I think sometimes an important piece. We also collaborate on research and documentation of sites. And so that's kind of the quick overview. I see many ways that we could intersect with Pennsylvania Hallowed Ground. We're very interested in US colored troops because many of them were freedom seekers who had escaped, and their burial sites are some of the things that we have in the network. So thank you.
Okay, Diane, thank you. That's a lot of great information. I got lots of questions for you, but I don't think I'm going to take up the time from all the other folks that's on here to ask you those questions. We'll have to talk afterwards. But I would love to do something even just for my own cemetery, Midland Cemetery, because we do have slaves buried there. And I'm constantly trying to get, use it as a place for tourism within our area. And it would be wonderful to actually add that to this, to the grouping of the Underground Railroad, and also to use the logo, you know, because I think it's very important that we, you know, do work in fellowship with each other to get this information out. One of the things that you mentioned was about, you know, when the Underground Railroad actually started. And it started from the time the persons were first brought over here over 400 years ago, because there was nobody that in their right mind that would stay behind and want to be enslaved, because even if they didn't even know any better, they was probably trying to figure out how to get back across that great ocean to go back home. So yeah, to have it pinpointed to just a period of time, a small period of time, would be unrealistic. So I'm glad that you're expanding on that and including the outward boundaries of the United States, including the Bahamas and the West Indies and Hawaii, and also Mexico and Canada, because most people in their minds and in what we're teaching in school, or what they have taught in school, it was just that, oh, they ran up north. Was nothing else. They didn't go anywhere other place. They just ran to Pennsylvania, and they didn't realize Pennsylvania was still a slave state up until a certain time. You know, they was just, oh, network to freedom. You know, it was going to be that Mason-Dixon line. Let's just hop over there and nobody's going to touch me. So this is great information to be shared, and I'm glad that we are recording this so that people can learn from it for those who weren't able to jump on today. So anyway, we're going to go right on into, let me get to my little paper here. Boy, I'm learning so much with this here Zoom thing. I tell you what, it's something else. Okay, so we've covered the Network to Freedom. Diana, wonderful, wonderful presentation, as well as everybody else. And now we're going to get into, and you know, we got a little time, so we got some wiggle room so that we can get lots of questions and answers. So Jeannie, do you have anything right now that you want to present to the presenters so that they can start talking?
Sure, yeah. We had a few questions and comments in the chat. The first one that I saw was from James Morgan III, and he said this while Azura was talking. He had said, I wonder how the Great Migration has had the residual effect of us seeing our cemeteries fall into disrepair. And I don't know, Azura, if you had any thoughts about that or anybody comments on it.
She's on.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. You know, yeah, if you think about the cemeteries that were left behind when people, you know, moved north or even to the West Coast, I do wonder about that. And it's interesting. I remember early on, I was asking Shelley and Raphael, you know, because Greenwood is in Hillsdale and it's a residential neighborhood right around it. And I asked them if anyone who is currently living in the community has ties to the cemetery or has relatives buried there. And I think you said that really no, because of the way that populations kind of shift around. So, you know, the Great Migration is that on a macro scale, but even within St. Louis, people who might have relatives buried in Greenwood probably don't live close to it anymore. Is that right, Shelley?
She's on mute.
Okay. No, there are actually, as one thing we always say, if your family went back generations in St. Louis, chances are you have a family member buried in Greenwood. Mm-hmm. And we find that to be more the case than not. Many people don't realize it until later, and then that's when they call us and want to know where they are. With Greenwood, though, as the years went on and desegregation happened with the cemeteries, it saw less business, and there were other places for African Americans as far as the choices. And from that point on, we started to see a decline. And you know, it takes money to run a cemetery to maintain the grounds, and 32 acres is no joke. What you saw was that the family that initially started the cemetery was no longer interested in maintaining it. And so you saw the decline, the rapid decline. And from there, they eventually sold the cemetery. And from there, you know, the people that took over the cemetery were not interested in keeping it up because it wasn't seeing the profit. And so I would say probably for basically the last 30 years is what we have now, trying to reclaim it.
Right. So we have a few more questions that came in. This came in while Raphael was talking from Donna Rilling. Could you tell us about the state of the cemetery record?
Okay, well, that would actually be me again. So
I just cut grass.
actually, we went to the previous owners, because the first family, they owned the cemetery for roughly over 100 years. And so we went to those owners, we went to the subsequent owners after that, we went to libraries. And so of the 50,000, I would say that we have record of, location-wise, about 36,000 people. And of course, there's still many, many more that we're still trying to reclaim, because there's still segments, years, that we have actually no records at all, like 20 years. And so you know that those people are buried there because the death certificates reflect that. And so I would say, honestly, the state of our records is not in bad shape. We have it on a database, and which we maintain, and we're constantly adding to it as we clear more grounds. We're always coming across something new. So we're in decent shape, I would say, but it's ever changing.
Okay. And then another from Randy Harris. Said, great work. Sorry if I missed this, but who owns the cemetery now?
Well, we formed a board where we are the owners of the cemetery now. Greenwood Cemetery Preservation Association is
right, and it's a 501c3.
Right. Yes, we are. Thank you.
And this is Brenda Barrett. I have a question on the ownership. How did you obtain ownership? Did you obtain it from the earlier owners? How did the nonprofit organization become the owner? This is a question that's come up in Pennsylvania a lot.
Yes, many times.
Well, the last owner of the cemetery walked away from the cemetery.
Right.
And the St. Louis County took over the cemetery. Okay. But they took it over in name only. They didn't do anything to it. They just took it over in name. So when we approached them about taking ownership of the cemetery, they were more than happy to get it off of their hands and into our hands.
We paid the taxes, which were a couple of years there, and once we formed the new board, we also became the owners as well.
So they passed a resolution and turned over the deed then to the property?
We do have the deed. Now, whether or not they passed a resolution, I don't know if it was that formal.
They took an action though, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so they actually put it into the name of the Greenwood, or?
Yes, it's shown on the property now, that Greenwood Preservation Association. I don't know if we're going to regret that, but but yeah, we are shown as the owners.
Well, that's awesome, because I just became, I being Friends of Midland, just became the owner of the Historic Midland Cemetery as of August of this year. And we've been fighting to get this done for many, many moons, because in your case, you had the county that actually took it over, or the area that took it over. But in my case, we were trying to find the actual owners, and they had long gone, passed away, died, moved away. Nobody of their descendants wanted to come forward to say that they owned it, because then they would have to clean it. And so it was a really big thing for us to, with the help of Dan Stern, to get that accomplished. And it was like, whoop, we got it done. Thank God for that. But a lot of the cemeteries around here are not owned by the people that's taking care of them. And because of that, you also have to worry about legalities and problems like that. So congratulations. That's a great thing.
And the same to you as well.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Well, Jeannie, what other questions do you have or comments?
Yeah, so this one came in earlier, but it's actually related. So this was from Tamala Tenpenny. What was the level of difficulty in tracking down the deed and its heirs?
For us, a lot of that was, it was public record as far as who owns the cemetery and mailing addresses. And so we, through the library, St. Louis County Library, St. Louis Public Library, along with St. Louis County Records, had shown the previous owners. And so with that, we were able to reach out to the original owners, the descendants. They had boxes of records that they very quickly turned over to us. And in the case of the last business person that owned the cemetery, his family had a box of records, but like I say, it wasn't nearly complete. So yeah, it was difficult in some aspects, but this has been going on for what, 20 years now that we've been working on this.
Well, that's a blessing that you actually have access to the records like that, you know. And you've had, when was your last burial?
1993.
93, okay. And so fortunately with everybody, you know, still being somewhat fresh in the cemetery, that the records were current. Were you able to reach out to the undertakers, funeral homes? Some
of the undertakers are no longer in business. And in some cases, when I was able to reach out to a few, I mean, some of them gave background information as far as what their practices were and how they maintain their records. But today, many of them, they will just simply show that the person is buried in Greenwood. There's no location.
Right.
Oftentimes we rely on relatives or descendants to, such as my husband, who had burial cards that actually had the burial locations. Well, that's a nugget. That's a gold nugget there. Right. And so we're able to take that and add it in. So it is laborsome, but like I say, you get excited when you come across something like that.
Oh, I understand. How far back do your records go?
To 1874.
All the way back to 1874. Wonderful. Yeah. And how are you preserving them?
We have a database.
I'm talking about the original records.
Oh, the original records. And Etta Daniels actually has the original records, and I want to say that they're in a box in her house, to be honest with you. So it's something that we've got to, I think, transition. I want to say that she plans to turn it over to the Missouri Historical Society after she's gone.
Well, I was going to suggest, and hopefully before she's gone, so that you know that they're going to get there and set it into the trash pile, you know. If you can, you know, well, you know, you don't know who's going to clean out the house, you know, and if you're going to be there when they start cleaning it out to grab it. So, you know, my suggestion is that if it would be, you know, willing to do that, would be the time to do this now and get it into the Historical Society or into your state archives so that it is maintained. You know, I understand that you have them digitized and whatever, but to have the actual record and that you can put it someplace where the world can see at a glance, would be far better than in a box somewhere.
That's so true. And she has given a directive to her family, and it's in her will, from my understanding, of where these records are to go. And it is to go to the state archives, like you mentioned. But you're right, though, to get that done while she's still with us. Yeah, that's a sure thing. And I will,
it'll make her feel happy.
I think so too.
All right. So we have some more questions from Steve Berg. This one is this one's to Azura Cox. What are your thoughts on how African American cemeteries can sustain over time the work that so many individual caretakers undertake now, like Shelley and Raphael, so that these sites are maintained into the future?
She's on mute.
Yeah, sorry, my dog started barking, so I had to go on mute. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the fundamental question, or one of them here. And I think it goes back to, you know, what Shelley mentioned. A lot of these Black cemeteries, even at their height, did not have a perpetual endowment, which most white cemeteries enjoy. And actually, in the case of some cemeteries, and I know Washington Park at least, the people who were buried there and the families actually were told that the cemetery was going to be maintained in perpetuity, and it just wasn't true. So there has been also, you know, I think a lot of owners, commercial cemetery owners, took advantage of, again, that captive market when cemeteries were segregated, and kind of took advantage of people's limit of, you know, choice. So that's a travesty, and I think the only way to really remedy that at this point is to, I think, either through grant funding, or, I mean, the preferable avenue would be through taxes, through actual legislation that directs, you know, taxpayer money to maintaining these sites. And I mean, that's true of many Confederate memorials. I mean, that's the big irony, right? Like, so many Confederate memorials, Confederate cemeteries are maintained in that way. I know, at least in Virginia, that's true. And I think it's probably true in other states in the South. And so the ultimate irony is that, you know, there's taxpayer money going to maintaining these Confederate memorials, and none going to maintaining Black cemeteries that are, you know, historically very valuable and of the same era in many cases. So I think that the legislation that's being introduced in Pennsylvania is a really great, promising step, and I hope that that can serve as a model. But really, I think it's about making sure that these cemeteries have a source of institutional backing, so that it doesn't rely on individual donations of time and money, and, you know, sweat equity. I think they deserve that, because it's an integral part of our history, and one that's been covered up in many cases.
Yeah. All right. So we have another question from Steve Berg. This one's to Diane Miller. Can you say a few words about the process for getting a site listed into the Network for Freedom?
Yes.
Oh.
She's on mute. There she is.
There.
So we have an application form, which was loosely based on the National Register of Historic Places form. People can nominate sites to us, and twice a year, the staff reviews all the applications that have been received and evaluate whether they're sufficiently documented. That's the broad outline. We encourage people interested in getting something listed to contact us and talk to us before you start working on the application, so we can kind of talk about the documentation and what might need to be strengthened, and how the argument about the Underground Railroad Association is shaped. You can reach out to me. They can probably give you my email, but it's simply Diane_Miller@nps.gov, and I can have the person who handles Pennsylvania get in touch with you.
Okay, great.
Okay, I think that was pretty much it for our questions in chat for the moment. There's some good information shared by some people. Does anyone else have any other questions that they want to ask our speakers right now, or?
Well, I see something out there about the ground penetrating radar. And do you see that note there from Kim to everyone? And then you go down to see Jason Herman to everyone.
Yes. I think that was directed to someone specific, but maybe not. Just read it here. I'm an archaeologist who specializes in the use of geophysics, including ground penetrating radar. Prior to the pandemic, I had hoped to have completed some fieldwork in Mount Zion AME, Bertha Jackman, and possibly Eden Cemeteries, Sheila Jones. I'm interested in getting involved in more preservation projects. Once I have these 2 projects finished, please contact me and he provides his email address. So.
Well, that will help to answer the question from Kim B to everyone. So,
yes.
Brian and Kim Williams. Okay, cool. All righty. I want to ask a question to Diane. Diane, is there any kind of connection between, you know, the network and also the National Registry? Is there any kind of partnership with that?
I would say loosely. I began my Park Service career with the National Register, so I think a lot of how we do things follows their pattern. We used to have one of their staff people that would work with us on reviewing Network to Freedom applications. We need to get that started again because that person left the agency. We do talk and share information, but we don't work real closely on a daily basis.
Okay, all right.
I have a question, Diane. How many of the approximately of the Network to Freedom sites are cemeteries?
That's a good question that
no, it's okay.
There's actually quite a few. I would say, I don't know, wild guess 10 to 15%, but it's a good question. I'm going to try to look it up and find out.
Right. Well, especially thinking about how to advocate for the proposed African-American burial legislation. It sounds like we could use as a starting point the database that both the National Register has, which is very limited, and I think your database, which would be bigger. And so I just hadn't thought about doing that before, but I think from an advocacy point of view, that would be a good starting point. I'm really excited about the idea of having the African-American burial legislation pass next year if possible.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, we can brainstorm about that later, but I'd talk about it.
All right. I think we have 2 more questions that have come in. We have one from a Mr. Weiss. He asks, what is the state of affairs in New Jersey quest for Diane Miller from James Johnson? Do you want to?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to, what is that question?
Yeah.
I don't see the question.
It was sent to me privately.
Oh, okay.
Hold on. So let me get some clarification on that. We have one from Randy Harris. Can the pending Pennsylvania legislation include a provision for property tax credits for volunteers at local cemeteries in the areas? This is done for seniors in some Pennsylvania school districts, providing up to $500 per year against their school property tax.
Well, that's an interesting idea, Randy, but I think the pending legislation we were talking about actually is national legislation, so it might be different. But I think looking at that idea for Pennsylvania, I don't know if it would get a lot of use, but I think it would spur volunteer efforts and would get some real publicity for the incredible hard work that volunteers do in Pennsylvania and as we're hearing across the country. Thanks, Randy.
Okay. Was there a question in with Renee Ingram? I was just trying to read that very quickly.
I'm not sure if there was a question there. I think she wanted to share with everybody what was going on with their work in Virginia. So it's some interesting information there that everyone can take a look at. Okay, so here's the question. I'm going to try this one again. James Johnson. Can Diane briefly discuss the status of the cemetery projects in New Jersey?
I wish I could, but I don't know. I'm not involved with them.
Okay.
That's the short of it.
And we will be sharing the chat information with everybody afterwards, along with the recording. So you can, everything that's in the chat room will be available for you to research later. So.
Well, I tell you, this has been very, very enlightening because I never had heard about the Confederate cemeteries being taken care of by taxpayers' money. And I've been to a couple other Confederate cemeteries down in Maryland, Francis Scott Key, you know, is standing there as you're walking in, and you see all the Confederate headstones up against the back fencing and everything. It's like, wow, you know, I mean, it looks wonderful as a person who loves cemeteries, but when you think about it, it's like, well, what's going on here? Why is it that they're going to be taken care of? And here you have the people that were enslaved. They get nothing but a highway placed over their heads, you know? So you know, not to say that they shouldn't be taken care of, because, you know, they were somebody's child or mother or father or somebody, but, you know, we need to make sure that it's across the board to be the same, and that we are all honored and taken care of. We don't need to have that mailbox on our heads. We don't need to have that federal building on our bodies and our ancestors. We don't need to have a road driven over us or placed over us. You know, we need to be honored and respected just as anybody else, you know. And this year has been an eye opener for many, many people to realize what has happened to us in the past, because so many people have turned a blind eye. They got one blind eye and then they turn another blind eye. They don't see anything, you know. So we really need to bring some of this history to the forefront. Diane, my one question to you is the fact that with this, are we just looking at people that are of famous nature, like William Still? Are we looking at people that are just the local people that worked at the steel mill?
Oh, we are looking at everybody, anybody that we can document was involved with the Underground Railroad, either as someone who escaped or as somebody who helped in some way. Help could be giving shelter, giving food, raising money, providing transportation. We're really looking to understand the whole movement.
Okay. And, you know, and one of the things people need to be aware of, and this is just my own thought, is the fact that the Underground Railroad just didn't happen in the South. It didn't just originate in the South, because Pennsylvania was a slave state. And even though you were enslaved here, it doesn't mean that you weren't trying to run from Philadelphia or the suburbs of Philadelphia to get into Harrisburg or move into Pittsburgh or get to the upper part right at the New York boundaries or the lines there. So, so we do have those Underground Railroad, obviously, ports here, even in central Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, you know. So this is where we have to broaden and educate the young people. Yes.
I would add every single one of the original 13 colonies had slavery.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about the Bermuda Triangle, for example, you know, coming out from the northern part of the country here, out of the 13 original colonies, and how it, you know, and the last name was Wolf, how that family used a lot of that money to go over there and get the slaves, drop them off in the West Indies and everything else, grab that sugar cane, grab those slaves, and then haul their little run back on up north here, you know. So yeah, a lot of people don't know all those wonderful stories of their, and it's actually, you know, this is not only about cemeteries, it's about their descendants today who have to learn about their ancestors of yesterday. So this is a great thing. All right. Okay. So folks, where are we at in our wonderful program? I hope that everybody is getting something out of this. I know I am. We are now at our point where we have completed our question and answers. And I want to take, if you don't mind, and I don't want you to go too far, just maybe take that run to the kitchen and grab some more water, grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, while you listen in the background to the wonderful spiritual messengers. This is a group that's local here in this in central Pennsylvania. They have been playing around Pennsylvania, and I'm not sure if they've been outside of PA to play their music, but they are a combined group of wonderful background men, and they're just wonderful. They have great music. They're as the title says, spiritual messengers, and some gospel music. And you'll Jeannie's going to put up a picture of them and play some music, and we will continue in 5 to 7 minutes or less. Okay.
See you soon.
Hey.
All right.
All right, Miss Brenda. We good. We're doing good.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. I'm loving the questions and the feedback. I'm loving that. Oh yeah. Did you see Ophelia? Thank you, Ophelia. You're on with us now, huh? Yeah. Hey. Okay. Yes, Ophelia. Just to answer that question quickly. Let's put it this way. I know I'm putting stories together of my people. So, oh my God, this is great. There's a reason why we have virtual what you call Zoom. There's a reason for it. So you can reach beyond the boundaries of your own house. Yay. All right, Jeannie. You don't want me to sing, right?
Ask your question. Do you know that you have a way maker, you have a heart fixer, and you have a mind regulator? Let's look around you. He made a way for you to be here today. He made a way for you to have a job. He made a way for you to have a way to get back and forth to your job. He made a way for you to have a roof over your head. He made a way for you to have clothes on your back. He made a way for you to have food in your home. Yes, he makes a way for you out of nowhere. He made a way for you when you didn't think there was any way. Always. I stopped by to tell you today that he is a heart fixer. He is a mind regulator, and he is a way maker. I says he's a heart fixer, he's a mind regulator, and he is a way maker.
Way maker. He'll make a way. Way maker. He'll make a way. I was walking down the road. It was too dark to see. Called on the name of Jesus. He came along and he rescued me. You may be lost, and everything you love is gone. Be strong in the Lord. You
Yes, y'all, he made a way. He took 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread, fed 5,000 men, plus the women and children. Oh, yes, he did, y'all. That's making a way. And my word tell me that he had 12 baskets of fragments left over after everything was over. Everybody had ate and was filled. See, that's God making a way. That ain't nobody but him making a way, y'all. Just trust him. Put your trust in it. Believe in it. He will make a way for you out of nowhere. Yes. And I just stopped by to tell you today that he is a heart fixer. He's a mind regulator, and he is a way maker. He's a heart fixer. He is a mind regulator, and he is a way maker. Way maker. He'll make a way. Way maker. He'll make a way. Way maker.
Okay. Boy, that was a beautiful song. Jeannie? I think we're back on. My goodness. Oh my goodness. Folks, we're going to move forward. Time flies when you're having fun. Isn't that just the way it always is, right? Okay. Hopefully you enjoyed that song by the Spiritual Messengers. I feel like I'm doing a little hosting here, on a radio show or something, That's cool. But anyway, let's move on. Are we getting everybody back in line here, which is great. Everybody got up and moved around, got the blood flowing again. Normally, when we're out at the, actually on site at one of our many places that we've been to around Pennsylvania, we usually have a chat and chew going on, and, people are eating. We try to have folks that will, they'll bring in a nice display of food, and we're usually just rubbing it down and it's just enjoying that and talking to people and doing the mixing and matching and everything else and networking and everything. So it feels weird not to do that being virtual. I feel like I should have food delivered to your homes right now so you can do a chat and chew, We'll have to try that next year, hopefully, when people can come together, and even try to incorporate the virtual part of this into that, into our challenge for next year. So hopefully and prayerfully this COVID will have been gone, and everybody will stay healthy and well and everything like that. So anyway, welcome back, folks. I'm going to introduce to you a wonderful woman, young lady, who is right here in Central PA, and her name is Ophelia Chambliss, and she is known, she is the commissioner for PHMC, and she, I looked at her bio, and I know that she wasn't really talking about her bio, but she's an artist, and she is, I've seen some of her work, I was like, my God, she's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But more importantly, she does work with, she has a BA in communications from Penn State University, and combines her visual communication with verbal and written communication to tell the story behind her work. She has an MA in communications from Penn State University with an emphasis on critical media discourse analysis. From what I have learned about her, she is very much into PHMC, and she has been bringing forward some great information and making some changes and doing things for the better of everybody. So I am going to turn this over to Ophelia M. Chambliss. All right.
Well, good morning, everyone. I had to check my watch. Yes, it's still morning. And thank you for having me. This is a lot of really wonderful and extremely valuable conversation. These are conversations of things that we should have been having all along. Yes. Never too late. And we have all these wonderful opportunities now. So we really are at a pivotal moment, a critical moment to really get things right and get them moving in the right direction. I wanted to talk about two things in particular, and I won't keep you very long. One being what the PHMC is doing in terms of historic markers. And the other thing is about the importance of capturing those stories and recording that history. There's a huge movement with artists recording history, because very often what happens is where there was stories, there was no image and no representation of, things we can find in newspaper articles, but just because there's no image, we should not hesitate to tell that story. So if you've got artists or other people in your communities, let them start reaching into that, share those stories with them, let them create images so they can become part of this public record. Let all of your historical societies in your community give them this information so that it becomes one with all of the existing history. And that's very important to make that happen. What the Pennsylvania Historic Museum Commission is doing is also recognizing all of these stories and these histories. And they're trying to do this, outside of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, where most of the history is right now, because, those are most of the people that submit these things. So we're really trying to capture, and recognize these cemeteries all across the Commonwealth. Anybody can submit a marker application. I put in the chat earlier the link to the PHMC for submitting this marker application. And right now they're making a concerted effort to recognize any African-Americans, noted African-Americans throughout the Commonwealth that need to have a historic marker within the communities, any cemeteries that need to have a marker. And you can find all of the guidelines that are there now. You can look at other markers that have been recognized that has a search component. You can attend marker dedications. There's a calendar that has all the marker dedications. You might find some in your area that you want to attend. They have resources for doing research. We have a huge archive facility. We're actually building a new facility in Harrisburg area, and you can actually go there and do research. And they have a connection with Ancestry. So you can take stories, take names, and really build these stories and add value to not just another name or there's a Black person here and a Black person there. No, let's add value to that story. Amen. And let's start telling these stories from their lens. A lot of the work I do is based on the West African folktale that says the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter until the lion has his own storytellers. And it's our responsibility to become those lion storytellers, to tell that story through that lens. The PHMC has this annual review in December where there's a committee of people throughout the Commonwealth that review these applications. And as I mentioned, they're making a concerted effort to increase the number of people of color that are recognized through these markers. They've been doing these historic markers for more than 100 years, or approximately 2,000 markers throughout the Commonwealth. They can be street side, roadside. They're the tall blue and gold markers that you see throughout the Commonwealth. And they're important, and they become part of the database. They become part of the Commonwealth's history. They become sources for other people to look at and say, oh, I did not know that, and do additional research. So every time that we do these things, every time we make note, we record, we identify, we give another opportunity to create part of this record. And I think that's very important for us to do. And I think it's extremely important for us to do now, because we are at that point in time and in history where there's an appreciation for it, and there are opportunities for it, and we have an obligation and a responsibility to make it happen.
Okay. All right.
Not sure if you had any questions.
Yeah, I was just going to ask the people if they had any questions. One of my questions or comments, I was on a conference call not too long ago about the state markers. And one of the things that I think was Shelby that was talking about it, that we need to raise money for the marker. Is that correct?
Correct. They do have a cost associated with them. And off the top of my head, I can't recall what that is, but the PHMC will help with, not necessarily with financial resources, but point you in different directions. Sometimes your local political officials will help raise some money. You know, your local historical society might assist in raising those funds. I know that I think it was State Representative Kenyatta Johnson in Philadelphia was assisting folks in his community with raising funds to cover that as well. And I know that they've made a concerted effort to help cover those costs. But yeah, there is an associated cost with that.
Okay. I
believe there's grants out there, a number of them actually right now that would be available too.
Okay. Jeannie, I see there's a question for you to address. Do you see it? It's near the bottom. And Jeannie, you're on mute right now.
Yeah. I think I can say there's a question that says, what do you mean by a surge component of markers?
Yeah, from James Johnson.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by surge component, but right now, I mentioned the number of markers that we have throughout the Commonwealth, but the majority of them are in Philadelphia and in Pittsburgh, those larger areas. And the goal is to get markers in other counties as well. So to get them throughout the entire Commonwealth, because not all of African-American history happened in our large cities, it happened throughout. Here in York County, we have been able to, in the process of working with the York County History Center, identify a lot of amazing stories and a lot of historical components that need to be recognized. So, we're, on this uptick of applying for markers that, give credit and acknowledge the stories and the histories of the people that came here. We had, in 1827, a wagon load of about 60 manumitted slaves that came from Virginia that settled here. One of them actually, we have a deed in his name of property that was given to him, was given to William Penn and then to a Michael Smith, who then sold it to one of these individuals. So there's a deed in his name. A marker needs to be erected for that. So as we do our research, we need to start looking at the significance of these things and applying for markers to recognize these things.
Well, do you have, with the markers, I mean, it's a great thing, but does it really prevent people, communities from destroying a particular area? Do you find that this is like a roadblock for them to say, okay, well, there's a historic marker there from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, so we're not going to touch it anymore, or infringe upon the site anymore?
I think it offers a little bit of protection because it is recognized by the state. So now it's part of the state's record. I mean, when you consider a lot of these sites, wasn't on anyone's radar. Now they're on the Commonwealth's radar, that they've been recognized and identified. So yes, I think it does offer them some form of protection that this site has been recognized.
Now, if the persons can't, or the group can't afford a state marker, or that they're not really, because it's not something that you give out to everybody,
right, or
every group or whatever. So if they get their own, and I think that was one of the suggestions out of that particular meeting with Shelby and others, that if you can go ahead and get your own, and how does that blend into the state marker program?
I think people could get their own markers, but I think the state might be reluctant to put a marker where there's already a marker.
Oh, okay.
So it's best to probably, apply for an official one. And I think as far as the funds piece, I don't know if I would let that prevent me from applying, because you have to go through and get approved. And then to get the physical marker made, that comes a little bit later down the line, but submit the application anyway. Okay. And then work on the funding component of that.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Great. That's good to know.
And we have historic markers on parking lots that used to be a cemetery, and it's a parking lot to a daycare center now. So just because the actual cemetery, the actual site is no longer there, that can still be recognized.
Okay, well, good. That's good. Now, do you have like a program for the young people, the children, that they can get their parents to travel across Pennsylvania and search out these markers?
That would be a really cool tour to have people go through. There is a map, and there is a list of all the markers, so you could actually go through and search through the markers, and it's all on the PHMC website. And you could probably plan a tour. So if someone says, well, we're going to go, across the state, and I want to visit all of the markers related to Black cemeteries.
Yeah.
You could potentially do that by going on the site, searching through the markers, and plan your road trip along that way.
I don't know if Diane is still on with us, but would that be something that we could couple with like Diane Miller and the Underground Railroad, and along with the cemeteries that's associated with the Underground Railroad, and have that as a possible tourism type thing that people can just connect from, let's say, from Delaware and New Jersey borderline all the way over to Ohio, or from from New York down to, Maryland. That would be really, I think that would be really great. And then, it's increasing tourism, it's increasing money into the community, it's increasing knowledge definitely for the children and their parents, because a lot of the parents know less than what the children know. So it could be something that would be, a way of trying to get people to understand about the history, and also to understand what is in their own backyards,
Absolutely. There's another site out there called the Historic Marker and Database website.
Okay.
And it does just that. And actually, people who visit sites are able, that it's almost like a Wikipedia. They're able to visit a site that they found interesting, that has some really interesting components of African-American history, and they're able to put on there, I visited this site, I found this to be very interesting. The people who run that site will then, add images and talk about it, and then add it to their database. And a lot of people do tours through that. So a lot of people who want to do site visits go through that Historic Marker and Database website. And I think they capture national sites.
Okay. Well, good. Well, hopefully, with all these wonderful thoughts and suggestions, that something else is going to be kicked off probably in your office, okay, to get some of this stuff moving, hopefully. I mean, anything we can do to protect the history, and, we can't protect just African-American history, because everything's so intertwined. All right.
Absolutely.
But with that being said, thank you, Ophelia. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to move forward with the Caretakers report from the field. Jeannie is in control of that, and we're going to have any and all. Brenda, I think you're going to unmute, or we're going to have people raise their hands if they want to share any kind of questions or comments or concerns about what they're doing with their own cemeteries. Okay, so Jeannie, I'm going to let you take over from here. Okay, and I can't hear you, Jeannie.
How about now?
There you go.
All right. So we're going to start off with 2 videos that were made by cemetery caretakers. I'm also going to share a link in the chat to a professional video about Eden Cemetery that's coming from Sheila Jones. But we're going to start with these videos made at their cemeteries by their caretakers. The first one is from Bertha Jackman. This is Mount Zion AME in Devon, Pennsylvania. So get it started.
And I want to thank Bertha and Crystal for making these videos. Usually we have presenters present a session or 2 at our meetings about their cemeteries, and this time we're doing it by video because we can't be there.
So
for sure.
We'll see how it works.
Hold on. Nope. Okay.
Hello. Welcome to Mount Zion African Methodist Episcopal Church. We're located in Devon, Pennsylvania, on the corners of Berwyn Baptist Road and North Fairfield Road. Our address is 380 North Fairfield Road, Devon, Tredyffrin Township, Chester County, PA. Mount Zion is 171 years old. The congregation is 171 years old, and we are under the dynamic and forever forward-looking leadership of the Reverend April M. Martin. We are also very proud to say that the church and the cemetery are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. We were listed in January of 2015 for the significance of the Berwyn School fight. In 1932 to 34, the black families met here at Mount Zion to strategize and plan about how to fight against a new segregation policy with 2 school townships for the elementary schools. The families fought back for 2 years. They boycotted the elementary schools, and they won their fight outside of the courts 2 years later. Unfortunately, the children lost over 300 days of their school education. We have 21 USCTs in this cemetery, which I understand is one of the larger groups in a small cemetery like this. One of the USCTs is the Reverend Nelson Hughes, who was the first local preacher in this church in 1849. I'm going to highlight just one of the headstones, and in front of you, you see the headstone of Isaac Hall. He was a sergeant in the 32nd Regiment, and he was in Company K. The reason why this headstone is remarkable is because it was the first headstone placed in the cemetery in about 60 years or more. A lady from Maryland was searching for her great-grandfather. She never knew where he was buried, and she contacted us, and we were able to locate his records here at the church. She had a program for him. We were able to order this headstone from the Veterans Department, and she had a beautiful program. We had the 3rd Regiment reenactment group out of Philadelphia come and do their salute, and it was a beautiful, beautiful day. Plans for this church. We want to continuing taking care of these headstones. They've recently been cleaned, and we're trying to set up some kind of system where we will have continual funding for the care of the cemetery. The other major project that we're looking at is Mount Zion is going to be working with the Center for the Analysis of Archaeological Materials within the the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. They will be conducting the cemetery subsurface surveys where they will measure the ground, the underground. Hopefully we can find where some of the grave sites are, because the cemetery looks like it's not full, but it is. So we are looking forward to that sometime in the near future. And my name is Bertha Jackman. I'm the church historian here. Our website is historicmountzionDevon.org. Thank you.
Okay, so excellent, Bertha. And next we have a video from Crystal Crampton. This is of Bucktoe Cemetery. It's in Chester County, just south of Kennett Square. So hold on. And then
I'd like to welcome you to Bucktoe Cemetery, which is in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. Let's open the gate. Here's our sign. My name is Crystal Crampton. I am the site coordinator for Bucktoe Cemetery, also a lifetime member of New Garden Memorial Church, where now our pastor is Reverend Beverly Bell. We have some Civil War soldiers buried here. I'm going to introduce you guys to one. Sorry, it's a little wet. This is Corporal William Jackson. And he was the first one I found. And at the time, there was a really big tree that was in between him and what you could see from the road. We have built the fence up. We've tried to have done some clearing, give honor to who honor is due here. The bench that is roped off is made out of 9,000 plastic bags. It'll be here with everyone that is buried here after I'm long gone. This is our educational board. If we're not here, we tell people about what's going on. This is what the area of the church used to be. That's roped off here. We do educational digs in the summertime and some in the fall. This here, sorry, it tells you what's going on in the area and at the cemetery. Also, what we have here is a sign that kind of has what the church used to look like. I'm going to kind of zoom in a little bit so you can see it. And the church, after it was here, went to 309 East Linden Street in Kennett Square, where it still stands today. So I hope you come and visit us. Again, this is Bucktail. A peaceful place, a beautiful place. And God bless all whom are buried here. Not only the corporal in the corner there, and looks like someone took his flag, but everyone who is here. Come visit us in Kennett Square when you have a chance. God bless.
All right, so that was Crystal's video. Thank you for sharing that, Crystal. And then I believe we're going to open things up to any caretakers in attendance, so.
Can I say something?
Yes, you may.
Okay, hi, this is Bertha Jackman. Excuse me. Following up on Ms. Chambly's information about the historical markers, in my video, I forgot to mention that Mount Zion, Devon, is a recipient, a recent recipient of the historical markers. And we will be having our dedication on November the 21st. So, Ms. Chambly, thank you very much on behalf of Mount Zion.
Okay. So I believe that if you have a question, you can go ahead and ask it because everyone is going to be unmuted. So.
So Darlene has a question about how many burials are in Bucktail. Crystal? Where is she? Crystal, you're on mute. Unmute yourself, Crystal. There you go. Nope. For a second you were. There you go.
Hi, at Bucktail, there's about 122 people buried there. It's about a little less than an acre of land.
Okay.
Kind of small, huh?
But it's beautiful. And the people are there. So, you know, I mean, I found some cemeteries that only had like a couple of people buried in them over there in Newville, you know, so it's not about the size, it's about what's going on with it, you know. Tina, Charles, you said that you had a your video is missing. Do you still have it available?
Tina, this is Brenda Barrett. Your video just came in last night, and so we were not able to put it up.
Okay, but we might be able to use it in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. All righty. There was someone who had contacted me a while ago, well, actually about a week and a half ago, about the veterans flag holders in their area, and it was someplace outside of Philadelphia. They were trying to get flag holders, and they're not getting any good response from the Veterans Administration there. So the, Joe Beckton, would you happen to know? And I know Joe was online with us here. Joe Beckton, are you?
He's on mute.
He's on mute.
And Joe, you know I need 3 more.
Okay, yeah, Joe, that's the one that that they're asking about, you know, for the Grand Army of the Republic. Do you know how the group can possibly get any? Can they get them through their Veterans Administration? Should they be trying through their county, or what? What should they be doing?
I know that there's several counties that do help get these. You can actually buy them privately from Christiana, Pennsylvania. As a matter of fact, Darlene Cologne has introduced me to the folks that make these. So
okay, Darlene. I
believe they're about $12 a piece or $15 a piece, and this is what you get. Also, I'd like to suggest that when you're looking at for Civil War markers, in the 35-star flags or 34-star flags, that really kind of make them distinct from other people in the graveyard. But yes, Lancaster County, Darlene, can you come on and tell them a little bit more about it?
Darlene, are you there? I know I saw you earlier. Yeah, she's there. Darlene, you're on mute. Okay, well, maybe she stepped away.
Am I unmuted? Okay.
If you want to speak, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm good. Yeah, there is a gentleman in Lancaster by the name of Steve Weber. I will get you his information that he works with making all of these markers for any time period. He's working with Cristiano on a number of projects. So I will be happy to share his information and put you in touch with him if you're in need.
Okay, well, you know, that would be something great, Darlene, and also Joe, because, you know, people do send me those notes about that. How can they get them? You know, in Dauphin County, I can just request them from the county, and they usually have, I guess, the VFW or American Legion to get them out to the various cemeteries. And actually, they were removing the old ones that were metal and placing the ones in like Joe just had. And the reason being because people were stealing the old metal ones and selling them at the flea markets. But that would be a great benefit. Would well, I guess if people need them because of the costs, they could possibly maybe do like a fundraiser with them, or possibly, you know, get a small grant or something so that they can get whatever they need to replenish the you know, whatever was maybe taken, stolen, or not even put there at their various cemeteries. So Darlene and Joe, if you guys can put that information up for us, we'll get it disseminated through the Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds website and make sure that people are aware of where they can get it and how they can get it. Okay.
Will do.
Thank you so much. Okay. All righty. Are there any other questions or comments?
So I wanted to go back to something that I missed in the earlier Q&A from Kim Williams, Brian and Kim Williams of the PA Commonwealth Monument Project. They had asked about anyone having experience with ground penetrating radar. I thought this might be a good time to talk about it. I know that some people have done ground penetrating radar, so if you want to talk about your experience with it, I think it would be appreciated. So
we also have Jason on who does it also. He's down in the corner waving.
Right.
Bucktail has done it. It's very beneficial for your cemeteries. I suggest it.
Well, and in your case, Crystal, having it done, did it enlighten you to headstones, or because it just gave you a better understanding of how many bodies were there?
For both of them, because we weren't sure of the pattern at first, because like you see it cleared now, but it actually looked like greenwood. It was so overgrown. And we were tripping on headstones and markers and rocks. So the ground penetrating radar helped put out the layout. And then it also helped us find how many pretty much were buried there. And they're kind of on top of each other, kind of crisscross. So it's a lot.
Right.
So it does help you in that type of way also.
Okay. Well, I just had it done, just a small fraction of the cemetery done that is under the street and on either side of the road. And unfortunately, it didn't give us a whole lot of information, but that is the area where the slaves were buried. And as most people know who's been working in the cemetery business for a while, that usually the slaves were not interred in a box, they were shrouded, you know, and if they were in a box, it was not a box that was going to stay forever, especially with the conditions that we have in Pennsylvania. You know, we have a lot of moisture, and they were buried down by the creek or near the trash dump. So all that just got eaten up quite quickly over the last decade, or not decade, but the last centuries or so. So ground penetrating radar is good. And if we can get Mr. Jason Herman to talk a little bit about that, I would really appreciate it. Jason, are you still with us? Okay, can you take yourself off of mute? Jason, can you take yourself off of mute? There you go. Wait a minute now. You're still on mute again.
There we go.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Jason.
Hi, I'm Jason Herman. I work at the Penn Museum in the Center for Analysis of Archaeological Materials. And I'm an archaeologist, but I specialize in using things like ground penetrating radar, also aerial and satellite imagery to map landscapes of the past, and using some 3D methods too to record and document monuments and landscapes. Wow. And so I am new to Philadelphia, new to Pennsylvania, and have been here for a year, and wanted to get involved in local archaeology, and have been working at the Woodlands and with Miss Bertha Jackman at Mount Zion AME, and starting to get involved at Eden Cemetery as well. And I'm interested in getting involved with local preservation projects that make a difference, like these, the ones we've seen today, mostly for training and opportunities for people, for nonprofits and heritage preservation organizations and the public. So if we were to use ground penetrating radar, the University of Pennsylvania doesn't own a ground penetrating radar instrument. I'm working on that right now, but we can work on funding to get that together. I'm happy to work with anybody interested, and make it as easy for anybody that's interested as possible. We do have other geophysical instruments that could be useful in mapping parts of the landscape, not just burials, but historic foundations or even patterns of land use that have been abandoned or changed over time. And without getting too far into those, we do have instruments for those. And I can, if anybody's interested, you can look me up. I put my email in the chat, but look me up online and drop me a line, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about working in the future. Time is usually the only constraint on that.
How far are you willing to travel?
It depends. I mean, I mostly work in the Middle East, so I can travel.
Well, we got a couple people asking, so.
Yeah. I'm going to have Jason right on up here, you know, in Central PA. It's called Dauphin County Midland Cemetery. There you go, Jason. We'll have some food ready for you, okay?
All right. Sounds great.
All righty. Okay. Thank you, Jason. That was an unexpected pleasure. Anyone else, people that want to add to either the ground penetrating radar or just talk about your cemetery as a whole? Caretakers, we have Tina Charles on here. Tina?
Can we get a cemetery shout out? Like everybody tell whose cemeteries?
Yeah.
That would be lovely. Okay. Let's not do it all at one time now.
Well, we've heard from Bertha and we've heard from Crystal.
Well, look there. There's Steve Berg. Oh my God. Hi, Steve. How are you? You're on mute too, Steve. You know, I need to get everybody off of mute right now. You're still on mute. You're gonna unmute everybody.
No, everybody has to unmute themselves. I've given you the chance to unmute yourself, but if you don't unmute yourself, you won't be able to talk. I can't unmute you. I just allow you to be unmuted. So, and we don't have much time left. So
yeah, we don't have much time.
Let's just say hi or.
Yeah. Tina, are you able to unmute yourself? No, you don't have, oh man. I am so sorry about this, but you know what?
Samantha, I think might be unmuted now.
I am now.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. So I am working with Tina for Lebanon Cemetery, which is in North York, here in York, Pennsylvania. Cemetery was started in 1872. And one of the things that we've noticed, I'm sure you all get the same, is many of the same names, family names going all across the Commonwealth. So it's wonderful to be able to kind of track families across the way. I personally am a Smallwood, and living in York, never knew that we had Smallwood family right there in Lancaster County. So, you know, it's been great learning from all of you. We have a good bit of the historical information is on our Facebook page, which is Friends of Lebanon Cemetery. And then for all of the markers and headstones that are visible, we do have all of them in the Billion Graves app. So when people are visiting our cemetery, it will take them, you know, directly to that spot using the GPS coordinates. Within this past year that we have been active, we have uncovered over 400 of the flat markers, and we do then pull the information. Last but not least, in regards to our folks that were in the military, we have a great young lady named Jenny who works with us. She's pulled all of the military cards. We have the obituaries. So if families are looking to get military markers from the Veterans Affairs, we will provide them with that paperwork at no cost. Last part, I am a grant consultant. So as you guys are talking about these different projects, it may be better for us to be able to do something as a network,
yes,
to be able to have those services from people like Jason and others, that we could do this, as well as with the markers. I love the idea of that Commonwealth Cemetery tour, getting those sites. So Barbara, I just sent you something that said if we can get the GPS coordinates of each of the cemeteries, we could go ahead and get those mapped out and have that available to everyone in the network so that we can visit.
Okay, well, just to answer you quickly there, Jeannie is our go-to person for the mapping and everything. And yeah, I'm sure she saw that also. So that's something that we'll definitely work on to make sure you get, okay? Okay, all right.
Okay, this is Bertha again. There is another little small cemetery in Chester County called Ebenezer AME Church. It was built, the church was built in 1832, but it's now in ruins. The four walls are still standing, the roof is caved in, but there's cemetery all around three sides of the church. They have 2 USCTs in there. And some of us are trying to see what it is, working with the township, East Whiteland Township, to see what it is we can do about getting the walls restored, you know, shored up so they can still stand. And then also just to maintain care of the cemetery. And right now we've already started on that. So we do have the township working with us in maintaining the, you know, cutting the grass and that kind of thing. But just wanted to shout out Ebenezer AME Church ruins in Fraser, Pennsylvania.
Yes, my name's Peter Spencer, and I'm with the East Whiteland Township Historical Commission. And we're working with the church as well to see what we can do about this site, which promises to have quite a few surprises and wonderful things in it. So we're in particularly might be interested in the ground penetrating radar, as there are a lot of gravestones that are buried underneath the surface. So we look forward to seeing what we can do with that church and the graveyard.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if you don't mind, put your information down in the chat so we know the name of the cemetery that you're referring to, and we can just compile this information and have a catalog and also share with each other. And then from each other, we'll figure out who can do what. Just like Samantha says, you know, she's good at the grants, and, you know, other people are good at the ground penetrating radar. And then there's other people that's good at whatever. So we can couple this together. And that's what we're all about with the Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds Project, is to pull what you're good at doing, you know, because we can't be good at everything. So we'll take and uniformly pull this together to make sure that things are working, especially like people with Joe and Darlene. You know, they got something that's good for us and that can be shared with everyone. And that's how we make it work. That's how we make it happen. Okay. So thank you. Is there anyone else that want to add anything at this point? Because we're almost near the end and I don't want to miss out on anybody.
Hi, it's Craig Stutman here.
Hi, Craig.
Hi, board member at Eden Cemetery. Just wanted to thank you all for doing this morning, and mention that we had just received a HARC grant from the state of Pennsylvania for preserving our archives, and that we're going to be releasing a GoFundMe campaign as well soon on supporting that grant for preserving the archives and digitizing records. And we also hope to do more programming like we did this summer digitally when we were doing some online events, not only for Founders Day that we've done every year, but for just a particular topic, special topics covering the cemetery. So once again, thanks for embracing this platform on Zoom.
Well, you are welcome. Go ahead, Brenda.
Oh no, I was just sighing.
Yeah, well, we're down to the wire here, folks. Kathleen, did you need to?
I have a question. I thought I saw a little bit something in the chat about restoration, and some of the tombstones in our church cemetery are tilted, and I'd just like to know what people have done to help to get them straightened up.
All your local funeral homes that do memorial stones, and they ask them to come out and take a look at it. Don't move it yourself because it might need some other like maintenance. It could be like a tree root bringing it up or tilting it. You want to go to the people that actually put headstones in cemeteries.
The monument makers.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. You know, up here in PA and in Central PA, there is a couple of monument makers, and that's almost one of their specialties, and that is going around and helping cemeteries. However, I would suggest that you know, get the costs and then maybe do a fundraiser, like someone just mentioned about a GoFundMe, and you know, raise the money so that you can hire the group to do it. There's very
also ask for free.
Yeah. Free is always good. I love free.
Always ask for free or donated time.
Right. Yeah. In-kind services is good, you know, but also try to get that money so that you can get the best of the quality of work that you can possibly get. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question, because we all have headstones that are falling over, tilting down. They're down under the dirt. You know, just a little response for Midland Cemetery. We just had a woman up there just 2 days ago who her focus was just trying to find her own family. And I told her where I thought they were. And fortunately, she started digging around. She found the entire layout, which is totally under eroded dirt and grass. And she has, and you know, even though she is not a volunteer for Midland, she was a person who wanted to find her own family, and she found the cornerstones and everything else and was able to send pictures, because I wasn't able to be at the cemetery while she was doing it. So I said, just go for it. And she found the entire family plot with the letter B at each corner, which is now exposed to the, you know, to the world. And I was just happy to have her do her part as a descendant of her family members that are buried there. So we need to, you know, take care of this property, take care of these people, take care of these headstones and monuments. And that's another way to document the history. Take pictures of those headstones. and couple them with your documentation that you're finding. But folks, we're almost down to the wire here, but I think we done covered everything. What I would like you to do is to send us a note. Let us know what you thought about our program today, our meeting today. And I'm sure by the grace of God that you got something out of it, even if it was just one sentence, you know, but let us know what you felt and what we can do to even make it better. And next year, hopefully when we can come together, that we can.
You'll be in Keynote Square.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And
Crystal, you want to go ahead and tell them about that?
Well, hopefully COVID will be over, and we are inviting you to New Garden Memorial Church, which is in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. You will probably be more excited because we are now part of the Underground Railroad. We do tours. We are inviting you guys anytime you would like to come down after COVID. I'm like so serious about that. If COVID lasts a little bit longer, you'll be probably seeing us again on Zoom or some other way. But we would love to have you guys come and be a part of us. You're all part of our families now, so let's stay connected and reach out to each other, because one hand helps another hand, and we can all get it done together.
That's for sure. Thank you, Crystal. And yes, hopefully we'll be down in Crystal's neighborhood next year. We were supposed to be there this year, but COVID took over. So hopefully and prayerfully we'll see you next year down there, and we'll do our typical chatting too. And we can somehow incorporate the Zoom into that for those people that are not right there in the area or who don't want to travel across PA to get there. So to have it a double way would be really, really wonderful. With that being said, folks, we're at the very, very end here. And I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for your input, from our speakers, which was phenomenal. Yay! Our caretakers who are always out there to support us and do their thing, the attendees, whether you have a cemetery or not, but you just have an interest in history, maybe your own history or whatever, that is a blessing too that you're there. And definitely to the core group that I had mentioned earlier with Dr. Stephen Berg, who is with us here. Thank you, Lord. Brenda Barrett, again, congratulations on your award. Jeannie, you did an excellent job with the Zoom and pulling it together. Bertha Jackman, oh yeah, girl, you had to put some words out there today, didn't you? So that's awesome. Sheila, I know you're going to send us good information because you're always sending us things about cemeteries around the country. And God, I hope I didn't miss anybody. But
please leave your information with us.
Crystal. Crystal Crampton, yes. Thank you, Crystal. So
please leave your information with us so we can contact you.
Right.
Definitely that. Definitely that.
Barbara, Jeannie's going to say a word or two.
Just to let everyone know, we'll be sending out an email that includes all of the linked resources that people have shared in chat and if anywhere else, and then also a recording of the speakers and their Q&A. I think we'll send as well from the